Well, go on, everybody. Lennox here from Simple123 Trader. This is the weekly playbook outlook for the week of July 11th to July 16th. Hope everybody's doing well and are safe. Let's take a look at what's setting up for this week in the markets with the major currencies, futures, and also the US stock market. Starting off with the Australian dollar. And from last week, of course, from the last number of weeks, really have been pointing out that we've had a head and shoulders pattern that's set up. And basically, right now, we are heading to the downside. We have broken through the neckline of the head and shoulders, and we're on our way to the downside. Still more downside to come. Looking like eventually we'll more than likely come back down into this area on this move. But at this point, it's still considerably bearish on the Aussie dollar. Okay, so on the daily, taking a look at that, still any moves to the upside are just opportunities to sell with the Australian dollar at this point. Okay, because we're in definitely a deep dive to the downside. So that's what I'm seeing overall. So for this week, going into this week, we're on the daily here, so more downside to come. Any moves to the upside just will play out for opportunities to sell the Australian dollar. Okay, let's take a look at Bitcoin on the weekly. And Bitcoin also, again, same type of call. Remember, I called price to move to these highs of breaking over 60,000, and then price to drop back down into the $30,000 range, and that's, you can see that played out, and that's almost a similar pattern to what's going on with Australian dollar right now. But right now, Australian dollar basically is sitting around this area on that move to the downside. So the expected moves to the downside are still to come for the Australian dollar. The Bitcoin is sitting at that level that I just pointed out that Australian dollar is going to be heading to. Okay, so what's happening for Bitcoin in the short term? So that's on the longer term, weekly. Now on the daily, we're still in that channel, just like on the other side, what we were, and expected moves to the downside for Bitcoin. So any moves to the upside will be short-lived, and you'll still be looking for sells on the Bitcoin. Okay. Now the one proviso, of course, is that it is definitely possible for price to break to the upside. However, any moves like that would be fake out moves and opportunities to sell Bitcoin. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at crude oil. So crude oil on the weekly has been very strong, but it's up, like I pointed out, against serious resistance at this point. However, I still see opportunities for this to continue going, but because it's at a resistance level, it will have these kind of moves where it pulls back, but those are just opportunities to buy, like I pointed out from last week, and this is exactly what's happening. So it pulled back, and the smart money is jumping in to buy on those dips. Okay, so that's what I'm seeing overall for oil. More moves to the upside to challenge those previous highs, and it's still early summer, and prices are just going to continue going higher as the need for energy, especially oil, driving and so forth, picks up. All right, Canadian dollar on the weekly. Canadian dollar also has had quite a run, and it too is heading to the downside. So it's you can call this a head and shoulders in a sense, a very elongated one. So we're getting to that point where we did break it here, and it's pushed back to the upside, but overall looking for more downside to come in the Canadian dollar. So similar to Aussie, any moves to the upside just mean opportunity to sell the Canadian dollar to the downside. So here's the head and shoulders basically setting up, and a neckline. We could call this area the neckline, and any moves breaking that level, breaking this level here, and we're heading to the downside in a hurry on the Canadian dollar. So weakness in the Canadian dollar. Um, in the longer term, of course, like I say, in the short term, any moves to the upside are just opportunities to sell. Let's take a look at the US dollar weekly. Okay, so US dollar, quite the moves to the downside. Tried very hard to push back up, and here's our support level, and it hit that level, bounced to the upside, came back down, is bouncing again. Looking very weak at this point that we could continue down. Okay, so it could be a channel that's forming here, and we'll be just, we've tested that, the top of that, it's failed, and it looks like we're going to be continuing to the downside. So a little bit of weakness in the US dollar, and you can see the moves here. We went up and completed our structure, and we're looking for, again, almost like another head and shoulders is set up. So a bit of down, maybe come back, and then another move to the downside, something like that in the longer term. This is the daily. So overall, we're looking for more moves to the downside. So any moves to the upside, like opportunities to sell the US dollar. Okay, so there's a kind of a theme again this week. Any types of moves to the upside so far are opportunities to sell. Okay, let's take a look at euro. Euro on the weekly also had quite the run to the upside and is now pushing to the downside. So it too, it's a bit of it's a head and shoulders in a sense, but not quite the perfect one as we would like. It's more of a sideways type of thing. So we're getting this type of action. We're at a very crucial point with the euro. The US dollar is going to be the key, of course, as it is with Aussie and British pound and New Zealand US dollar. So any moves with euro to the upside, that means the US dollar will be heading to the downside. So the euro is sitting at a very crucial point right now where it could indeed turn to the upside, and that's what it's looking like here. So let's go to the daily and take a look at it, and let's see. So we've come a long way down, and it completed our structure. Let me just get that. We've completed our structure to the downside, and we're pushing back to the upside. So we could get any pullbacks on euro would be opportunities to buy going forward, especially if the US dollar continues its decline. So going into this week, we're looking for buys or strength in the euro. Okay, let's take a look at the Swiss franc on the weekly. You can see if I go to the monthly, what you see is a chart that's very, very volatile. You can see the big, huge drop here, and then this kind of movement. So what is it doing? It's just been very choppy. It's a choppy affair, you can see. And at this point, it has moved quite a bit to the upside, but it's pulled back and is in a little bit of a move to the downside. So let's go to the weekly. We'll see it a little better, clearer. Okay, so quite the move to the upside, and now that huge pullback, a retrace of that move, and now it's heading back to the downside. It's just retracing this move. So right now, what I'm seeing is an opportunity for this to fall one more time. So in the short term, this is long term. In the short term, we're going to have a little bit of up, but in the longer term, we're going to have some more downside. So let's go to the daily, and we'll see that short term move. So in the short term, that's what it's doing. It's heading to the upside, and I would expect that to continue. So a little bit of strength in the Swiss short term. Okay. All right. So that's this week. So let's take a look at gold. Okay. So gold. Let me go to the weekly on gold, and you can see gold has had quite the run to the upside, and now big, huge pullback, and then a big, huge push to the upside. So where we expect it to go now? Okay. So 123 there, up to this level and back down, and it's trying to push to the upside. So let's take a closer look to see if that's going to be playing out. Okay, so now we can see the entire structure here, and it's looking like uh, it's just a retrace now. So what it's doing essentially is a continuation to the downside. So we're going to see this further weakness in gold as the week plays out. Okay, so seeing this dropping to further, breaking these levels, and that will be the play for gold. So similarly in silver, when we get there, we'll see that's probably the same kind of pattern that's playing out. So a little bit of weakness in gold going into this week. All right, let's take a look at the Japanese yen on the weekly. It's reached a support area and is bouncing to the upside. So let's take a closer look. So it looks like we're going to have a little bit of strength in the Japanese yen going into this week. And this could be short-lived, however. So at this point, it's been in a channel. It's trying to break through that channel. Will it have enough oomph to do that? It's possible. So we could get a pullback first and then a move to the upside. That's totally doable at this point. And it is indeed an opportunity for in Japanese yen, because we've had in the last week or so, this is on the daily, so in the last week or so we've had quite the moves to the downside, and it's pushing back up. But right in the short term, we're going to have a little bit of a pullback before we get that move, if that in fact does do that. If it continues down and breaks that low, then all bets are off. I'm going to be continuing down. Okay, so in the short term, a little bit of weakness in the Japanese yen. Let's take a look at New Zealand dollar on the weekly. So New Zealand, similar to Aussie, head and shoulders pattern, breaking that neckline. We're on our way down. So it looks like we're going to be continuing down for New Zealand, just like the Aussie, and that's what it's playing out. So any moves to the upside, we could be going sideways in here for a while as well. Any moves to the upside, and that's what it looks like it might be doing short term, is opportunities to buy or to sell. Sorry, to sell. Okay, the New Zealand, just like the Aussie. Okay, and let's take a look at the British pound. Oh, the Mexican peso. I think I might have missed one. No, I haven't. Okay, Mexican peso on the weekly, still sitting at that very strong resistance level and trying to break through. Is it going to break through this week? It's consolidating quite a bit in here. You can see it's very choppy, and the expected move would be to the upside, but it's in a battle right now. So I'm going to just drop down to the 4-hour on this one just to get a closer look. Okay, so you can see that indeed we're in this. It's kind of a bullhorn type of effect going on, but we could get a pullback. So a little bit of weakness short term, but I'm expecting a move out eventually for the Mexican peso. Okay, so strength in the Mexican peso overall. Any pullbacks, opportunities to buy. Now we'll take a look at the British pound on the weekly. Go to the weekly, and it's had quite a run as well. Hit some resistance, pulled back, and we're at a very interesting position here where we've hit support. It's bouncing to the upside. So strength in the British pound, similar to what's happening with euro. If the US dollar continues its fall, this is definitely what's going to be occurring. We get movements to the upside for the British pound. Okay, so strength in the British pound going forward this week. Let's take a look at silver. Now, silver, actually, I've been asked about silver this week a couple of times. My wife's brother, who's visiting from the nation's capital, Ottawa, has asked me about silver. So let me take a good look at silver here, just to give you an idea of what I'm seeing overall on silver. I'm looking at the monthly time frame, and as you can see, quite the move on silver in the last, since 2020. quite a move to the upside. Now you can see that we're kind of in a very choppy affair. It looks like we're heading back down again to meet the lows of we're kind of in a channel, and we're moving back down in that channel at this moment in time. So dropping to the weekly, we'll see that a lot clearer. So we've had quite a push to the upside, taking us up to this level, very choppy now. And the expected move is to the downside. And you can see that pretty clearly. We're kind of in a triangle, and we're heading back down to the bottom of that triangle. So opportunities for selling silver is apparent at this point for a longer term right now. On the daily, we're also pushing to the downside. Any moves to the upside in silver, similar to gold, is going to mean selling opportunities. So you can see what's setting up here. We're inside this area, and any moves to the upside means sells. Okay, but right now it's very weak. So silver going into this week, very weak, and silver overall very weak. All right, so that's what I'm seeing there for silver. Okay, taking a look at the US 2000. This is a Russell 2000. Go to the weekly time frame. It's up at a very critical point. It's reached very high level up here, and very choppy, similar to silver. Okay, so are we expecting some further drops in here? It's totally possible. Let's go a little closer on the daily and see what's going on. And you can clearly see now that we're inside of a very strong and rigid channel, and we're just moving up and down in it. And right now it's trying to push back out of there, and it looks like there's some strength in the short term at least for the US 2000, but it's going to hit resistance again going into this week. So a little bit of strength going forward in short term for the US, the Russell 2000. Okay, let's take a look at the Dow. And on the weekly, the Dow is sitting at a critical point as well, very strong resistance area. On the daily, it too had a little bit of a pullback, and it's sitting at again, like I say, a critical point, but I see further push to the upside. Any moves down and breaking this level here, all bets are off, of course, and we're going to be heading back down inside of a channel similar to what the US 2000 was doing. However, this looks pretty strong that we're going to be breaking through the new highs for the Dow. Let me just go a little closer. I'm just going to go to the 4-hour just to take a closer look, and you can see. So right now, this is what's happening. The expectation would be for this to continue to the upside in the short term. So breaking to new highs more than likely. We might get a little bit of a pullback first, but we're going to be more than likely challenging and breaking to new highs as the week plays out. Okay, so the US, the S&P 500, let's take a look at that on the weekly. Let me go to the weekly. Also pushing to new highs. This chart is a bit scary because it's just been straight up in the air, and anything that goes straight up in the air usually has to come back down. So this is definitely at a critical point in time. Just similar to US 30, we're at a point where yes, it can go up a little higher, but how much higher? That's the key question. Right now, it's breaking to new highs again, and I'm going to just drop to the 4-hour. For this week, we can see that it's broken to new highs. It could break it to a new high again one more time, but maybe that's it. Maybe all bets will be off at that point. It's very, very close to a point where this cannot push much higher. Okay, so you're hearing it here, and we'll see how that plays out. But short term, one more push to new highs, but maybe that's it for this market at this point. Let's take a look at the technology group, the US Tech, and on the monthly. Also, you can see again, this chart is straight up in the air, and anything that goes straight up in the air, you can see when price went kind of straight up, it came back down straight up. You know, we can see this coming back down as well. So I'm a bit leery of these high flying indices, and right now they've reached an extreme point and looking like they could be at their end of this long run that they've had. So be cautious. I'm seeing one final push, breaking to new highs, but don't know if that's it or we're going to be heading back down after that. We'll see. All right. So short term, a little bit of strength in the U.S. market to finish the week up and so forth. Keep your eye on the U.S. dollar if you're playing the major indices. If the U.S. dollar continues its rise to the upside, then we can expect further strength. Oh, sorry, weakness in the euro and so forth. But if it falls, which is the expected move, then we'll see strength in the euro and GBP and so on. All right. So profitable trading to everyone. Be safe. We're done now. Thank you.